I'm standing there. My salesman goes, "What are you going to do now?" I said, "I'm going to start a bank." He goes, "What do you know about banking?" I said, "I know what I don't like." And I said, "I know this will work." I said, "I've been running software companies at that point for about a little over 10 years. And I said, I still can't write a line of code and I'm doing okay." I said, "I think I can take on banking." And that was it.
Welcome back to Innovate or Evaporate, where we explore the relentless pace of change and the innovators who drive it. I'm your host, Toph Day. Picture this. It's 1998. The world is just starting to hear the screech of dial-up internet. Amazon is still mostly selling books, and the idea of trusting a computer with your life savings sounds like a plot from a sci-fi movie. Meanwhile, in a quiet kitchen in Indiana, a seasoned entrepreneur is looking at a bank statement and seeing something no one else sees. He doesn't see security in those massive stone pillars and velvet ropes of the local branch. He sees friction. He decides to do something crazy. He decides to build a bank with no doors, no tellers, and no physical footprint. When he goes to the regulators, they laugh. They tell him it's impossible. They demand he have a vault, even if he has no cash to put in it. Most people would have folded. But our guest today bought a safe from a big box store, filled it with candy bars to satisfy the letter of the law, and proceeded to change the face of global finance forever. He's a 5-time Inc. 500 founder, a pillar of the tech scene, and the man who taught the banking industry how to trade red tape for blue skies. David Becker, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. That's quite an intro there.
I have so much fun with these intros sometimes, like just kind of setting the stage, right, for what we're going to learn today. I'm so fired up. So, I mean, there's so many things to talk about. So we're going to cover all kinds of things today. We're going to touch on a little economic development, touch on those other businesses you've started. Yep. We'll hit First Internet Bank. We'll talk about some entrepreneurs. If you're in college today, you know, how to be thinking about things in the future, the ecosystem in the Midwest and Indiana. Maybe talk about board dynamics. And then we'll wrap it up with 50 years from now. What do you want people to say? So let's kick it off with, you have done so many things, all these Inc. 500 companies. I want to maybe just go one step before that for a moment. How in the heck where'd you grow up? And where did you get all of these ideas to start these businesses? Like, what is it inside of you that drives this?
My father would tell you, if he was sitting here instead of me, that I became independent at the ripe old age of 9. I had an Indianapolis Times newspaper route. I was growing up in Eagledale, the national home subdivision of the future. My father had come back from the Korean War with a GI Bill. He purchased a home. I was just about 5 blocks north of the 30th Street gate into the Motor Speedway. And that was my newspaper route from 30th in Georgetown up to 38th Street and then about 4 blocks west. And so that's what I started at 9 years old, got the newspaper route, learned that the more I sold, the more I could buy. I traded in my Stingray bicycle, the old banana handlebars, banana seat awesome. And stuff, and traded that in for a 10-speed because I could ride faster, deliver more papers. And as my father said, from that point forward, I did my show and game. I wrote business plans for years and years, everything from laundromats to dry cleaners to convenience stores, you name it. And always felt after that experience, and we moved to the country when I was in 7th grade, graduated from Monrovia High School. There was no newspaper routes. Houses at times could be a quarter mile apart. So my play there was working for the farmers. You could get paid by the hour. You could get paid by the bale, putting up hay in the summer. I always went for the bale because I could do more in an hour than I would getting a flat rate. And so I've always worked all the way through high school, had to work my way through college. So it's just been part of it and always a dreamer.
Are there any moments on those paper routes or baling hay where you learned some lifelong business lessons about how to do or not to do certain things or dealing with customers?
Oh, without question. I'll go back to the newspaper route. There was a house that had this massive German Shepherd, and the guy had 3 teenage daughters. And here I was a little kid, and they thought it was funny to turn the dog out into the yard on me and chase me. So the next time I came around to collect, they owed me for probably a month's worth of newspapers. I had a squirt gun filled with ammonia water. I shot him once in the face. The dog went yelping, and the girls never sent him out after me again. So you have to get innovative and creative. And I learned right there, when you hit an obstacle, it's not going to go away.
Right.
They do it every time they see me coming. So I had to figure out how to solve it. And that's just stuck with me from that point forward.
I wish I had learned that tidbit, because we had a German Shepherd about probably a half a mile from our house growing up, and that thing terrified me.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to ride our bikes past that house and come out there running.
Oh, massive dog.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's too funny. So you have a story early on with one of your businesses that you started, and this is kind of the importance of everybody like pulling on the same rope from an economic development standpoint. Everybody has their finger in the innovation pie, right? It's not just the entrepreneurs and the investors, but policymakers and entrepreneurial ecosystem support organizations, all the folks. And you were starting a business here. And there was some, I think Missouri was trying to recruit you, and just some learnings from that. You want to tell about that story?
Yeah, actually, it was an interesting twist. I had RDS was probably, at that point, about a 10-year-old company. And came up with the idea at that point of creating a web interface. As you said earlier, you had Amazon out there playing around with books. Gap was trying to do some retail. But to me, the internet would be a phenomenal mechanism to deliver software and banking to consumers 24 hours a day. So I went to the state of Indiana because I was going to make a multi-million-dollar investment in hardware, people, facilities. It was not mainframe, which is what I was doing the other work on. This was computer-based. It was a whole different game. And the state of Indiana said, well, if you want anything from us, you have to go get bids from 3 other states. So here's a startup company ready to invest millions of dollars. And they told me I had to go elsewhere and get 3 bids. So I went to Michigan, I went to Ohio, and I went to Missouri. We landed in Missouri, and it was like they had the red carpet rolled out. The governor was there, the mayor of St. Louis, the folks. They have a University of Missouri as a land-grant college, just like Purdue University. Put us all in a van, took us out I-70, took us to the campus. As we're getting out of the van, the gentleman, the dean of the university or president of the university was there, and he said, see that land across I-70? He said, that's where I want to develop a technology park. He said, if I have to, I'll cut a tunnel underneath the interstate so students can walk back and forth to work for you. He said, that's how bad I want your business here. Offered me free facilities, free space, the connection for the students, which my asset was students. It was the intellectual property. And put it all together, a hell of a package. If I could have convinced my wife to go to St. Louis, I'd have probably been in St. Louis. But I got back to the state of Indiana, and I had the bids, and reached back out to the Economic Development Corporation, and they said, you got bids? I said, I do. And they said, well, what are they? And I said, well, I want to do the same thing that I experienced that I had in Missouri. I went the president of IUPUI. I'd like to have the mayor, I'd like to have the governor, and I'd like to have you all come up and talk to me about what you can do for me, just like the state of Missouri and the university did. Well, we've never done that before. And I said, well, there's a first time for everything. Let's get it going, guys. And about 2 weeks later, they got them all together. And I think it was Jerry Betko, if I remember the name right, was the president of IUPUI. He said, Dave, I don't know how you did it. I've been trying to do this for 15 years. I could never get everybody in the room at the same time. And I said, well, I need your students and your intellectual property. I need some assistance from the state. I'm not asking for grants. I just kill the sales tax. Give me some kind of benefits. Give me some credit for hiring new workers. I got some folks from one of my businesses down in Memphis. I want to move up here. Just help me cover some of that startup expense. And I said, that's what I'm looking for. And we actually ultimately, I wound up putting a couple of classrooms in my offices. At that point in time, I was up on the northwest side of Indianapolis. in Park, was it Park Fletcher? Park 100, whatever it was up there, Park Fletcher, I think. And they would bust UPUI students up 3 days a week, actually taking classes in my facility, working on my programs. So,
And this is back in 80s?
Yeah. That would have been late 80s, early 90s.
Early 90s.
Yeah.
So let's touch on it real quick before we go into First Internet Bank. What are some of the other businesses you had in those first, 10 years-ish? 15?
Oh, yeah. I had RDS was the first one I started, and that was kind of a core financial system, did all the back office services for finance companies, banks, credit unions. Then I created ViFi, which was the web tool that enabled you to get to the programs through the internet. Then I started out as AmeriCard, became OneBridge, and that was real-time ATM debit credit processing. So the old days, if you had a ATM card, you could go to a machine and pull $200 a day, irregardless of what you had in your account. I didn't think that was very smart, but I got a story. Remind me to come back and tell you a story. So I thought, well, there's no reason these computers can't talk to each other. If you got $200 in your account, you get it. If you got 100, you get 100. That's it, pure and simple. Then we did Remember Marketing, which was how most institutions that never used these tools didn't have any idea how to sell it to their customers in place. So we put that together. And then I ventured out into other forays. I got Dino, which was an educational software tool that I picked up from DePaul University, my alma mater, went into the basement of the science building. The Dr. Burke had this thing, wired cables hanging from the ceilings. It was all over. OSHA would have walked in the classroom. They'd have shut it down, but it worked fabulous. I mean, the students could actually sit there and pay attention to the professor because everything he talked about, everything he did was captured electronically. They walked out with their notes when the class was over based on anything he wrote on the board or a student wrote on the board. It was all captured. And this was in 2000.
Yeah.
And it took me 2 years to convince him that an entrepreneur wasn't the bad guy in the black hat, that I was really here to help him. And ultimately, we wound up with over 1 million kids in 30-something countries around the world using the software before we sold it.
Wow.
And then I got into point of sale. I found a little company in Des Moines, Iowa. Gentleman had been an accountant working with specialty retailers, predominantly running stores. And he sold it as a turnkey, here's a disk, load it up, put the little PC on your counter and run. And again, I thought, well, that's nice, but it's very limited in what you could do. So I moved it all from a turnkey PC contained to online systems. We did auto order entry. We connected them straight to the manufacturers. Like if you wanted Nike shoes, the Nike catalog was there. You could build a store set of merchandise. It would auto refill every Tuesday, every Thursday, whatever you wanted to do. So I brought really the power of Walmart down to the little guys. So, and I guess I've just had a knack over the years of if I could see something, particularly if somebody had kind of started it, I could very quickly figure out how to take it to the next level and then some. So it was a lot of fun. Sold 3 to public companies and 2 to private venture. A couple smaller things that I did over the years. I set up 2 or 3 employees in business. I got tired of it. Didn't want to mess with it anymore. Said, here, it's yours. Just take it and run with it. And so, yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Wasn't there a story with one of the ideas that you took to the credit unions and they didn't see the value? And
yeah, that was actually RDS, my very first company. I was at the ripe old age of 27. I was complaining at that point in time, the original Merchants Bank with the green frog that was downtown here in Indianapolis, not the guys up in Carmel now. They were doing the processing servicing for credit unions around the state. I was the consultant that was working with them. And at the Indiana Credit Union League, and I kept complaining about the service. 1979 came along. They had deregulation. They could do anything. And I kept getting in trouble. Finally, the president of the league, Mort Jester, called me into his office and said, Dave, these guys pay us a fee for recommending their services and getting the credit unions to use it. So in a sense, they're paying your paycheck. Either find an alternative or start talking nice about them. I said that they're not doing anything good. I need to go find an alternative. So he let me go for 6 months to Go find it. Found a software service up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, owned by credit unions, working for credit unions, the right terminology. It was perfect. So I wrote a business plan with the idea that the services organization, instead of paying merchants to do it, would actually allow me to set it up, and hopefully I'd get to run it. I presented the plan. They argued for 45 minutes, not whether it was a good idea or a bad idea, but, well, should this be Services Corp? Should we do this? Should we do that? And finally, I literally, in true Hoosier fashion, stood up, whistled, gave a timeout sign, and said, guys, I'm going to solve it for you. I quit, and I'm going to go do it myself. And literally got up, walked out of the boardroom, cleaned out my desk, and went home. Called the guy up in Michigan and said, hey, Don, it didn't go like I thought it was. Any chance you'd sell me wholesale and I'll sell retail? You don't want to go outside the state of Michigan, and I'll cover Indiana. He goes, oh, that's possible when you want to talk about it. And I said, well, I can be there in about 3 hours.
Jump in my car right now.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in the car right now and give him the name of a restaurant. Literally went up, had dinner, did a handshake deal, came back. It was about 4 a.m. So I just went to Keystone of the Crossing, my attorney's office, sat down in the hallway outside their office, took a nap till they came in the morning, and put RDS together April 8th, 1981, and the rest is history.
That's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. You mentioned an ATM story about $200 bills flying out.
Mm-hmm.
What was that story?
Oh, when I was trying to sell, it was First Indiana Bank at the time, and I was trying to sell them on going nationwide and using my software tools instead of brick and mortar. That they were trying to do mortgage activities outside the state of Indiana. I said, guys, you can take the whole bank and go nationwide and do it in a real-time fashion. You have no risk. And the CEO said, Dave, I don't think that's right. I said, let me tell you. I said, in your organization today, how many ATMs do you have in the city? We have 24. And I said, do you have a call-in center, like an audio response, or IVR, they call it at the time? He said, yep, we got one of those. And I said, you got obviously a number of branches. Yeah, we got 12 branches. I said, I could go to every one of those access points in the same business day and pull $200 out, and you would never know the difference. And he looked at the IT guy and he goes, is that right? And he goes, yeah, we don't advertise it, but yeah, it's all offline. And that's just what we think is a daily limit. And I said, if I were industrious enough to drive around to the machines and drive to the branches, they don't talk to each other. At the end of the day, you'd settle up, and I'm going to hit you for several $1,000s, and I might have $100 in my account. And
that is insane.
Yeah. And that's the way it worked. And I said, guys, I don't understand how you take that risk every day of the week.
Yeah.
And I got a tool right here that if you don't have the money, you don't get the money. It's real simple. But
so when did the idea pop in your head for First Internet Bank?
It was literally then. I walked out of that meeting. I'm standing at the elevator with my head of sales. We thought we had a good deal. They had the whole board. We gave a 3-hour presentation. Everybody in the room under 40 would have signed on the dot. Anybody over 40 said, not in my lifetime. I'm going to retire before this shit happens. And
right.
All were ready to go. And I'm standing there. My salesman goes, what are you going to do now? I said, I'm going to start a bank. He goes, what do you know about banking? I said, I know what I don't like. And I said, I know this will work. I said, I've been running software companies at that point for about a little over 10 years. And I said, I still can't write on line of code, and I'm doing okay. I said, I think I can take on banking. And that was it. Went back to the office, started going through the process of how I would get a bank charter, as the fintech companies are trying to do today. I argue I was in the technology world. I wasn't a banker. And that I'm the first fintech in the country when we launched in 1999. It took me 3 years. I started in the summer of 96, and it took me till the spring of 1999 to actually get a charter.
So through that 3-year process, how much were you able to do? Because we didn't have Zoom back then. So how many trips did you do to New York, or were there other locations? Where did you have to go to?
I had to go to the, well, I started with the Department of Financial Institutions here in the state of Indiana, and they were downtown here. So I was going downtown at least once a month or so. Jim Cooper was running the show at the time, and meeting with him, getting through it. And at the time, you could start a new bank in the state of Indiana with $5 million in capital. I think a polite way to tell me no was say you have to get $15 million. assuming one, I didn't have it, and two, nobody'd be dumb enough to give me $15 million when you only needed 5.
Yeah.
There's got to be something wrong here. Well, lo and behold, I left, hooked up with Dave Knoll, McDonald and Company, came back 30 days later with $15 million, and it was like, oh shit, what are we going to do now? He's got the money.
He cleared the first hurdle.
I cleared the first hurdle. Then they turned me over to the FDIC, and the FDIC said, what the hell? You're coming up on Y2K when everybody thought the world was going to implode. Elevators were going to stop. Cars were going to stop. Everything was going to fall apart. And they said, "What? You're in technology. What do you know about banking?" I said, "I know how it works." And I said, "I can hire a banker. That'll make you happier. I'll hire a president that really knows banking." And so that started a program. I had to send the application to every office of the FDIC in the country. The application is simple to fill out. Branches, none. Drive-ups, none. ATMs, NA on 90% of the questions. And I said NA on the bold because I didn't need it. You have the big box story of going to buy the safe to appease that one. Little guy in Oklahoma called the next morning at 10:30. Said, "Son, you can't start this bank." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You have to have a vault." I said, "I don't need a vault. I'm not going to have any customers face to face. It doesn't matter. That's just a black and white rule. You have to have a vault." So that's where we went and got the safe. But I ran back and forth to Chicago then on at least probably every other month for a year and a half, and meeting with them and giving them updates, talking to them, bringing in experts. And I got in trouble in one meeting they brought the expert from Washington, D.C. in to talk to me. And I think she was an expert because she knew how to open an email attachment. There weren't a lot of technical experts within the FDIC at that point. And nobody was grasping the idea. So finally, I said, "Let me give you an analogy. Does anybody know Ray Kroc?" And one of the examiners in the room, "Oh, yeah, the hamburger guy started McDonald's." I said, "Exactly." I said, "I'm the Ray Kroc of banking." I said, "I'm just going to change the way I deliver the product to the customer." That's all Ray Kroc did. He made it self-service. I'm going to make banking self-service. The customer can take care of themselves. And I said, I'll do the back office like everybody else. I'll have files. I'll have data. When you examine me, it'll be like examining any other bank, other than I'm not going to have branches and I'm not going to have tellers. So the lady from Washington, D.C., "I don't understand. I just don't get, what do hamburgers have to do with banking?" So shortly after that, we took a break and we're standing out in the hallway, and she comes up, and I won't give her name. She's still floating around somewhere. And I said, "I'm very, very thankful entrepreneurs of the world don't think like you do, or we'd still be on horseback." And so my team put me in timeout, sent me to the lobby for the rest of the meeting. They didn't want me interacting with her anymore while she was here.
So First Internet Bank grows wildly successful. You were the fastest growing NASDAQ stock, I think, for a year or two.
Yeah.
So you finally get, what got you over the hump to get regulatory approval? Was there a moment or two that you think about, or was it just a series of going through all those paper cuts for several years? Or was a moment, what was the breakthrough moment?
It was 3 years. I was in the office on a Friday night about 5:30, 5:45. Everybody was gone. My phone rings, and it was a Washington, D.C. area code. So what the heck? I picked it up. It was a gentleman in Washington, D.C., and he goes, "Dave, your application for the bank is on my desk, and I'm the last person at the end of the line." And he said, "I don't know what to do with it." And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I'm a regulator. I've never made a business decision in my life. All I do is say whether or not you're following the law." And I'll call him John. He's retired and gone now. But I said, "Well, John, let me tell you like this. You can approve my application and you can retire. And you've been doing it 30 years. You can retire and you can walk out the door and say, you made a business decision. And you'll be long gone. If it goes bad, it's going to be somebody else's problem. You don't have to worry about it." He starts laughing on the other end of the line. He said, "I like that." Monday morning, 8 a.m., fax machine lights up, and he'd signed the approval. And by 8:35 a.m., I had opened an account, and it was live. I wasn't going to even give him a chance to renege on me and go back. So I popped it up, stood it up that morning, and we were live.
That is amazing. So this is 98, right?
That would have been,
Or 99?
yeah, it was the 1st of December, 98.
So we didn't have nearly the amount of tools. We didn't have email marketing back then, all that kind of fun stuff. How did you get your first 10 customers and then your first 100? Like, what was that go-to-market like to get customers to adopt this new way of interacting with a bank?
Well, we did two things. We set up the official launch for February 22nd. I was in New York City. I was in John D. Rockefeller's old offices on Wall Street. I could look out the window and see the bull. We had all the major networks. We had BBC. We had a couple of European stations. I had like 15 cameras lined up. We actually did the first live transaction at the bank at a Citibank ATM down on the corner. And had a lady who had written a lot of books about personal wealth and money management and tools. She was there. We did this big, really PR push. And we had TV stations that the estimate was that in that first 2 weeks of the launch, 80 million consumers saw it, read it, heard about it somehow, some way. The next morning, I was up in a well, let me back up one. During that interview, when they were talking to me, the one guy from BBC says, with his English, asked, Mr. Becker, what do traditional banks have that you don't? I said, long lines in the lobby. So that kind of became the tagline for the first couple of weeks. The next morning, I had a limo pick me up at the hotel at 4 a.m., hauled me to a TV studio, and starting at 6 for the next 3 hours, I had an earbud in the left ear that were the guys in the control tower, earbud in the right ear, and I was going TV to TV station, East Coast to West Coast for the next 3 hours, 2, 3, 4-minute interviews, just morning news snippets. And I got to tell you, by the end of 3 hours, I have a whole different appreciation for the morning news teams. I mean, you got to smile.
Right.
This is like first time I ever heard it. This guy's yelling in my ear, Dave, come on, smile. You haven't heard this question. Just forget about the other 99 times you've been asked it. Just go. And you could tell the people that had read the materials ahead of time and asked intelligent questions versus the guys that hadn't read anything and they were just, kind of trying to wing it. And so we went through that. And which was great. It got us a ton of coverage. And then the other thing, we launched a national campaign with USA Today. If you remember back in that day, that was a newspaper when you were a traveler.
Yes.
You got them at the hotels.
Yep.
I never looked at that paper unless I was traveling.
Yep.
And to me, that was my primary customer. Somebody that lived out of a suitcase, traveled all the time, that could bank wherever they were at and whenever they needed it. So we did full page ads, but they weren't the traditional banking ads. First one was bank naked. And the image was just big block letters on the 3/4 of the page. And you could see the person behind it was not wearing any clothing. And then down a little paragraph in the bottom, wear whatever you want or nothing at all because you're doing it in the convenience of your own home. Is this a great country or what? And then we did one that was bank free, an American flag, ran the week of July 4th. We actually had the number 1 6-month CD rate in the country on that day when it ran. And the mailman looked like Santa Claus coming in the office for the next 2 weeks because he had bags of checks, people buying CDs and coming in. We had one that was bank tripping, and in the background, it was palm trees and a sunset, like you're on vacation. The bank goes wherever you go. And the last one in the series was Bank High, and there's big puffy clouds, and with the idea that, you could be on the plane and pick up the phones. Back then you had the phones built into the seats and you could dial in and do your banking even on an airplane. So that was huge. We got all kinds of marketing accolades for the banking world because that was the wildest thing they'd ever seen. And what I didn't realize at the time was when you did full page ads in the U.S., you also got into the international issue. And so we had all these expats, the Lilly folks, Ernst & Young and whoever, that people go overseas, do the tour of duty. I was getting stuff from the people that I went to college with. Back, what the hell are you doing? I'm in London. I'm getting this newspaper. Here you are all over the paper. So it was great. And it was our perfect audience. The regulators thought we'd wind up with a bunch of college kids and $5 accounts. And the reality, we first launched, the average customer was a 58-year-old male, high net worth. Our balances have always been 3 to 4 times higher than a traditional bank for our average customer. Credit scores, 700-800s. I think our average credit score from about the beginning of the time has been a 780, which is super premium on the credit score side of things. So, great customers that they had the cash. The problem is they didn't need to borrow money. They already had houses were taken care of, cars were taken care of. So our lending really started with the next generation, like their children. And my oldest son, I can remember, he called me. He was in his early 30s. He said, "Dad, we're trying to get a wedding together, and I got a vendor I want to use, and I need to write a guy a check." I said, "Well, Jason, you have a checkbook." He said, "No, I don't." I said, "Yeah, that little package of those little blue things that you got." I said, "That's your checkbook." He said, "Dad, I lost that 3 moves ago. I've never written a check in my life." And here he is, kind of early 30s. He'd never written a check. I said, "Well, come by the bank. We'll do a counter check and you can go hand it off to the guy so you can get a vendor." But, he's grown up. All 5 of my children have really never been in a traditional bank and do everything electronically. And now they move money with Zelle or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm Mayor Chris Jensen. Innovation is accelerating across Indiana. In Noblesville, that momentum is taking shape along Innovation Mile, an emerging performance innovation district where organizations like USA Gymnastics, Indiana Orthopedic Institute, and Caterpillar are advancing the future of human and industrial performance. Supported by Noblesville Economic Development, it's a place built for companies ready to grow. Explore Innovation Mile at choosenoblesville.com/innovate. Noblesville, all about you.
So you recently, guess it's probably been 3, 4, 5 years ago now, built your new headquarters in Fishers, Indiana. Mm-hmm. Incredible facility. Maybe talk a little bit about, because we're going to head into, you give back a lot. You I don't know how you have so much time in a day to help out the ecosystem and entrepreneurs, serving on boards and all those things that you do. Let's talk a little bit about just your affinity for Fishers and the relationship with the community and giving back with where your headquarters are located. What has that looked like, and how has that evolved over the years as far as being a community staple from a corporation standpoint?
Oh, it's been great. Literally what got me to Fishers to begin with, we had offices at Keystone at the Crossing, and I was running out of space. And at the time, we had a mortgage division. I was trying to find someplace for the mortgage company to go. And I get a call from Mayor Fadness' office and says, "Hey, Mayor, I'd like to talk to you about maybe buying this building." It was the old St. Vincent's Hospital thing sitting there by the lake next to what's IKEA today. And he'd like you to take a look at buying it. And I said, "Sure. What do we need to do?" And this is like the first week in December. "Well, it needs to close by year end. He'll cut you a great deal if you can close it by year end." And I won't tell you the money. It was a phenomenal deal. So I went up, looked at it, took CP Perfetti with me, who was working with me. We went through the thing. I mean, there were spiders in there as big as your fists. I mean, the building, part of it, probably 60% had never been built out. It was over 10 years old. The other part had sat empty for like 3 years. So there's spiders and mice and junk running through there. And CP goes, "Man, I don't think we ought to do this." I said, "CP, this is a price we can't pass on it." So bought it, started rehabbing it, and worked with the mayor and really became good friends with him over the years. So as things moved along, we just started connecting with things that were happening in Fishers. We would finance a lot of stuff. We were working a lot of builders. In fact, the builders during the housing crisis, 07, 08, said if most of them that are up in the northern half of the county in Hamilton County said we wouldn't have survived if you guys hadn't been here to work with us through the crisis. And because we were new at it, I didn't have a lot of dead wood and problem loans and stuff and getting into commercial lending. Everybody was out of the market because the loans were going bad. I didn't have any. So I had a clean slate and had the ability to get in and do things, and just developed over time. I had cut a deal with what was Navient at the time, south of me, the big old USA Funds building, to buy 3 acres. I needed 3 acres from them with the land I had in order to build the new headquarters, and I was going to build it right there. And in the 11th hour, we'd spent 12, 15 months putting plans together, had it all designed. Appreciate this one. I hated that blue IKEA building. So I designed and laid out our building. It was going to be kind of V-shaped. So you wouldn't even be able to see IKEA till you were halfway up the ramp. My whole game was to block out IKEA. And I needed that 3 acres to build a parking lot so I could build the first half of the building, bulldoze the old one, and then build the other half. And in the 11th hour, somebody in New York just said, we're not doing it. So Sunrise Deli, they're on 116th. I'm sitting there one morning. Mayor comes in. He goes, how's your new project coming? I said, it's not. He goes, what do you mean it's not? I said, the Naviant just washed on me on the land. I can't do it. He goes, hey, I got a block downtown Fishers. If you want to get together, let's talk about it. So long story short, sure enough, cut a deal there. Worked out a deal with him on the garage, and I started paying property tax from day one. He helped me on some of the infrastructure and parts going in and underwriting the garage. And we've just been kind of glued at the hip ever since. We did the apartments across the street. We did the hotel next to us. We've done almost all the projects from Fishers in that downtown area since. And it's been a great relationship. And he's pretty creative, outside the box thinker. That's been my game from the beginning of the time. We hit it off and still run into him at Sunrise or 4-Day Ray or wherever.
That's amazing. Another story I'd love for you to share is how you recruit talent. And you started to go to the high schools. And look at how you recruit, talent. And I don't know if that's the high schools across, Indiana or the country or Fishers but describe that, where you're actually going and recruiting the talent and you can teach them, how to become a banker.
Actually right at 3 years ago now, Jason Cloth, who ran Ascend at the time, and he had worked for Teach for America, calls me on a Saturday afternoon. He goes, Dave, I want you to go on this trip to Switzerland with us. We're looking at the apprenticeship model they've been doing over there for 30 years. He said, as a businessman, we're always short on talent here in the state of Indiana. I think this is a way we can kind of grow our own. He talked to me for over an hour, explaining what was going on. I said, Jason, I don't think it's going to work. I waste the time. And I tell my wife we got a shot to run over to Switzerland and see this. She goes, we can go to Switzerland. You can give them a few days. Don't worry about it. So get to Switzerland, and it was unbelievable. Most folks think here apprenticeships are for the trades. You learn how to be a plumber, an electrician, a carpenter. Over there, they have 15 different job and professions. You become an optometrist, you become a banker, you can become a landscape architect. And it's about anything you want to do. They've got it in hotel and management. You can learn how to run a hotel, a restaurant. The whole thing is there. 70% of the students in Switzerland, instead of going to college, go through apprenticeship programs. They start over there at the age of 16, your sophomore year in high school. You pick a task of what you want to go try. But the system's very permeable. If you get into something you don't like, you can drop out and switch. If you met a gentleman, this last trip I was over there, I've been to Switzerland 6 times now, and met a gentleman who was a chef in restaurants for 15 years. Said I was just burned out on the restaurant trade, wanted to do something different, jumped back in, got retooled. He's working at UBS Bank as a trainer. And here he is, here you have a midlife crisis. You got to figure it out on your own. Over there, you just go back in, get retooled, bounce out, and go do something else. And the play, I think in the state of Indiana right now, we have about 100,000 open jobs. We don't have skilled people to handle and do. And with the apprenticeship program, we're going to start as a junior in high school because we don't have the transportation they have in Switzerland and infrastructure. We met a young man on this last trip working for Marriott. He would walk for 20 minutes to get to the train station. He'd get up at 4 a.m., go to the train station, run in. When he got into Zurich, he had to get on a bus to get to the Marriott Hotel to be to work at 6 a.m. in the morning. 16-year-old kid that's up at 4 in the morning to get going. And there was a lady on the trip that I met this one time, and she said, my children can never make a decision at 15, 16 what they want to do for their life. That's ridiculous. I don't believe it, and it's not going to work. I said, wait till you meet them. And I said, I'll talk to you when we're getting ready to go home on Friday, and we might have a different story. And so I looked for the last dinner we had on Friday evening. We got there on Tuesday. I looked all over for her because we had met probably at that point 25 to 30 apprentices at different companies. I said, what do you think now? She goes, it's me. It's not my children. She said, meeting these kids, she goes, it's so foreign to us and thought process. And, I didn't have faith that they could do this. And she goes, seeing these kids, it's amazing. And I got to tell you, she said, I've gotten my children through college. I said, I have too. All 5 of mine went to college, but I can tell you 2 would have been much better off in an apprenticeship program than doing this. So we're standing it up this fall. It's called NCAPS, Clara Fitty & Green, and the Fairbanks Foundation. Clara's been working on it for 6 or 7 years, kind of setting the foundation. Yeah. The Indy Chamber took a Lex trip there 3 years ago with about 150 people. We went back here in April, took about 75 people over. I'd say 55 had never been there. And everybody that goes there sees it in action, understands it. They come back drinking the Kool-Aid just like I did. So it's been phenomenal. As we finish up that very first trip, I'm on stage with Todd Houston, Rod Bray, Pam Whitten from IU, Mike Ash from Fifth Third, and they're going through and saying, talk about what you experienced. And they started on the far right with Todd. I was on the far left. And when I got done talking, Ursula, who's run the program in Switzerland for over 20 years, she stands up and she goes, you guys understand this. I've talked to 20 different countries. I've talked to 20 different states in the U.S. Nobody understands it like you have on this visit. And you get that man on the end down there to get involved in this. She goes, he understands. He gets it. You're going to get this done. And he's got the entrepreneurial spirit to get you there. And so that ended up with a conversation between Clara and I. Any chance you might co-chair this with me? Been a blast. It's been an absolute blast. So how do you think about talent here in Indiana, the ecosystem in Indiana, or even the Midwest? There was somebody, I think it was Warren Buffett, that said, if you ever have somebody apply for a job or wants a job that worked on a Midwest dairy farm, you just hire them. And you figure Ross Perot. And you figure out what they're going to do once they get there. Talk a little bit about what you've seen with the talent and the work ethic, that we have here, as compared to maybe just other markets. We won't mention what the other markets are, but just, versus other markets. Yeah. Well, that's part of it. Just the Midwest work ethic, the play. And I was having lunch with Ross Perot. He was speaking at DePaul University when I was there. And I said, you're phenomenally successful. And obviously you're an intellectual property company. That was EDS at the day. Mm-hmm. And I said, how do you find good people? And he said, I had my HR department find out the 10 up-and-coming people in the whole organization. At that point, he had 15,000 employees or something of that nature. Let's find a common denominator if there is one. 8 out of 10 of them had grown up on dairy farms in the Midwest. And if you think about it, cows get milked twice a day, 365 days a year. You can be sick, you can be feeling good, you just hung over from the night before, whatever it is. Cows get milked and you figure it out. And that kind of work ethic and problem solving, no matter what it is, convince your buddies to come over and help you do it. You just got to get it done. And it just instills that attitude in you that whatever the obstacle is, you're going to figure it out. It's like me and my bicycle route and stuff. That's just kind of ingrained here in the Midwest. The problem we have, the talent that we're training at the universities, we're still a gross exporter. The kids that graduate from the universities here in the state of Indiana, 40% stay, 60% go somewhere else. We're a great importer. We bring in folks all over the country. We're in the top 10 states for bringing out-of-state students to come here to go to college, and then we ship them back out again. So we got to figure out how to hang on to that talent and make it work here. And part of it, historically, I can remember back in my very early days, I went to a career fair at Purdue University trying to hire some techie folks and computer science kids. When I had an RDS, on one side of me was Motorola, on the other side was Microsoft. They're handing out stock options. I'm handing out Frisbees. I'm sitting there, what the hell am I doing in here? I'm never going to get any of these guys to work for me. And but I think we now have infrastructure. We now have capacity. And TechPoint has run their externship programs. Got in trouble on Friday. We're doing an NCAP thing instead of saying apprentice. I said intern. But we have 23 interns coming this summer. And for 40 years, I've used interns as a great source for growing my own employees and catch them. We try and catch them between the sophomore and junior year. We really like them. We get them back for the following year. And then when they go back to school, senior year, I come up with something I can have them do 10 hours a week. So I keep them on payroll and they don't even go to the interviews and stuff. They just come back to work for us the following summer. Done that for years. And now with the kids in high school, 50% of the kids in Indiana, 70% want to go, 50% get there, but less than 25 to 30% of the students actually graduate college within 7 years, not 4 years, within 7. Most of them have debt. For those that go and don't succeed, they're out of school. They have no skills. They have debt in most cases, and they're starting all over. So at the end of the day, 70% of the children that go through high school in the state of Indiana have nothing post-graduation. So here they will come out with a certificate by the industry, be it insurance, be it health services, be it banking. If they stay 3 years in the program, 1 year past the senior, they'll get an associate's degree from Ivy Tech, from Butler, from University of Indianapolis. We got a number of schools signing up. And then if they were still working on accreditation at the state schools, I think it's accepted, they will get 2 years of credit for the 3 years as the apprentice, and they can get a BA degree for just 2 years of additional college. They might have to take a class or two to go in for some pre-qual stuff, depending on what they're going through. But they can get through. And in Switzerland, a little different situation, a BA degree in college, it costs you $3,000 a year. If you're going for master's, it's $5,000 a year. For a PhD, it's about $8,000 because they don't have all the hassles that we have here and all the subsidies, and the schools aren't fighting each other. It's just, 70% of the kids are doing the other stuff. So the 30% that are going through, they have the money to fund it and do it right. And most of the students, the young man, Herman, that I met at UBS, this young man started there at the age of 16. By 17, he was in their ultra high net worth. His average client that he talked to was worth in excess of $100 million, had several billionaires that were his clients. I said, Herman, I can't believe that. They're talking to a 17, 18-year-old kid and you're handling their financial services. He goes, Mr. Becker, all they want is an answer. They got a problem. I give them the answer. He said, I happen to have a deep voice, so I don't sound like I'm 17 years old. And I'm sure as hell not telling them I'm 17 years old. But he said, no, I've got some phenomenal clients out here. And he said, they know if they talk to me that I'm going to get them an answer just as quickly as possible. And he said, if I don't know the answer, I get a research and I get back to him. And he said, that's all they're looking for is follow through. These are very busy people. Yep. And when they have a problem, they want it taken care of. And he said, I can do that. So he was graduating, met him on the last trip over in UBS. He was graduating and they're going to send him on to college to get a BA and run him up the management track. In fact, the CEO today of UBS Banks, one of the largest banks in the world, started as an apprentice.
Oh, that's amazing.
Worked his way all the way to the top. They have 4,000 high school students in the UBS system in Europe. They spend $50 million a year on apprentices, and the CEO's asking, do you need more? Because he understands that you, in a lot of cases, are getting employees for life, that, you set them up, you train them, and they're with you forever and a day. So,
yeah, and that onboarding cost as opposed to making a bad hire,
bingo,
right, is just phenomenal.
Well, and today, because there are more jobs than there are people, you're generally hiring some kind of an employment agency or service to help you. So you're paying them a fee. And what's your resolution? That, they might filter 20 people, send you 3 warm bodies. If you make a hire and it doesn't work out, then, they'll send you another one. And, you waste 6 months trying to figure out whether somebody's going to work or not.
Yep.
It's a waste of time and money. I can show any businessman anywhere in the country that they're going to get an ROI on their program through the apprenticeship without question. And in the play too, because it's standardized across the state of Indiana, somebody who works with Old National down at Evansville, they get married and want to move to Indianapolis. I know exactly what their credentials are. I know exactly the schooling so they can walk through the door and I can put them to work instantly. I made the conversation. I've been asked a question a couple times, and we actually, I said, ask the guy over here at UBS who's in charge of the hiring, would he take the high school student or a college graduate that had gone through the college program? He said, high school student in a heartbeat. They know our industry. I know them. I got the college student. They might have better communication skills. They might be a little more well-rounded, but they don't know anything. I got to start all over with them. And sometimes college kids come in with an attitude. Surprise, surprise. So, here I am. I haven't solved my problem. I've got a warm body.
Yeah.
I haven't solved my problem.
I've been talking to some students here over the last 6 months, and multiple times in those conversations, the typical internship out of college, those are drying up because a lot of companies, they're not sure what they're going to need. And so they're letting all this, we're in this great tilt, right? For the first time in human history, right? Production's far outpacing what we can do to keep up with it. And there's also the kind of the adage of well, maybe I shouldn't be looking for a job. How do I create my own job? So kind of head into entrepreneurship. Here in Indiana, we have High School Hustle, we have Started Up, we have Rise, these amazing programs that are out looking for those students that want to become entrepreneurs. And a lot of times have already started their company.
Yep.
In High School Hustle last year, the top 2 finishers grossed over $50,000 over the summer. And these are AI companies to power washing to landscaping and all in between. It's absolutely amazing. How, from your vantage point, any kind of high level changes in entrepreneurship and what we should be doing in K through 12 from an exposure to entrepreneurship, helping students build confidence and maybe realizing that that's a path, that can be taken. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, without question. The Swiss actually start at the grade school level. By 7th and 8th grade, they've been exposed to businesses all over the country. They call it sniffing. And the companies in the country of Switzerland will open their doors for a week and allow students of about any age and parents to come in, look around, see what's going on, get ideas. The entrepreneur side of things, they actually have classes for that, and you can take an entrepreneurship program if you'd like to do it. And I got to tell you what people keep asking me, you're so damn old at this point, why don't you just retire and go away? And I said, I'm having too much fun. I mean, in the early 90s and late 90s, it was the internet that gave me 24-hour a day, 7-day a week access to my products. I said, now for my customers with AI, I can do things for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I can make things happen. Where there, I could just allow you to move money around or whatever. Now I can actually do programming, answer questions for you. Our bot that we stood up in January answered 45% of the incoming calls for this last quarter and got a net promoter score of 68%.
Holy cow, that's amazing.
Off the freaking charts for financial world. And most of the folks had no idea they were talking and working with a bot. We had all the employees just data dump all the questions they had and what are the answers, and put all this in, trained it for 3 or 4 months, stood it up, and away it went. And if it gets to a point it doesn't know the answer to that question, it knows where to refer and who to get it to. Our phone queues have gone down, the people that really understand the products and stuff. And somebody wants to know, what's the new CD rate? Well, that takes you 60, 90 seconds or whatever. Bot can do it and done. And they say, well, I'd like to get an SBA loan. Well, let me connect you to Angie or whoever. And it pushes it through. So we have phenomenal customer service ratings over the last 90 days. We have virtually nobody dropping out of the phone queue. Nobody's on hold more than a few seconds. I mean, it's just cleaning up everything.
That's amazing because in the financial world, financial institutions, typically the NPS is well under 50.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, maybe well under 30 or 40.
Yeah.
And the tech companies, Tesla's at 90 or something, let's say. That is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So we are running up against time here, but I want to lean into a few more entrepreneurial questions real quick before we can get into rapid fires. So if I'm an entrepreneur, I'm growing my business. When at some point, many companies will get into board construction, right? Construction to board. And maybe it's not the board conversation, but if there were 1 or 2 or 3 topics we kind of hit on here towards the end for entrepreneurs to really think about and not take at face value just because somebody wrote them a check, they deserve a board seat. Like, what are some of the ways entrepreneurs can make sure they don't get off course with building their company by, accidentally setting up a dysfunctional board, or maybe getting upside down their cap table, or some good old fashioned go to market tricks? Like anything come to mind to share with the entrepreneurial crowd that listens to this podcast?
Yeah, I would tell you one of the things you hit on a few minutes ago, there are all kinds of programs out here. Anybody that has an entrepreneurial bone in their body in a junior high school level has all kinds of tools. When I set my first company up 40 years ago, there was nothing out here. There was no infrastructure. Yeah. There wasn't even a legal network, an accounting network. There was nobody that understood what I wanted to do. And now all of that exists, and you have organizations like TechPoint and all the ones that you named off that can help people get off the ground. So I think that's tremendous. Any entrepreneur that I have a chance to starting up a company, number one, whatever amount of money you think you need, double it, maybe triple it if you can. You're going to go through it faster than you think. It's going to take longer than you think. So whatever capital you're looking for, and do it in the early stages, because as you get along and you've proven it, they're going to take a bigger chunk out of you. It's going to be bigger dollars. And if you can hit a home run and get the cash flow positive and stuff in the beginning, then you can go to a traditional bank. You can borrow. And there's services out here today. There's a group in the state of Washington. They'll loan you what you want. You pay them, if you need $300,000, they'll loan it to you, and you pay them back $6,000. Faster you pay it back, they're not taking any equity. If you've got a good company and cash flow and you're moving in the right direction, just get it in, get it out, and keep your equity. There's a lot of options out here. And talk to fellow entrepreneurs. Most entrepreneurs, they're very busy, particularly in a startup situation, but they'll take time because they've been there, done that. I've taken a lot of arrows over the last 40 years and as a pioneer in a lot of spaces, but I'm always happy to help, particularly young folks that are trying to start out. A lot of things to do. Before I get to the board side of things, when you're looking for employees, whenever you are under the gun and you have to do a hire, you make a bad hire 9 times out of 10. Just as you're going through life and you're going through your day, you meet somebody that just knocks your socks off, hire them. Find a home, put them on board, because when you need them, one, they won't be there, and two, you're going to make a bad hire. I had a young lady that I saw her at a restaurant in Castleton Mall, toned down a guy that swore he had a reservation, a restaurant that never had a reservation. He had 6 people with him. He was total ass, pissed off everybody in the lobby of the restaurant. And this young lady handled him, got all the rest of us settled down to, do you mind if I push this guy ahead? No, get him out of here and wherever. So on the way back out of the restaurant, I handed her a business card. I said, that's just innate customer service. I said, you're born and bred with that. 99% of the world couldn't do it. If you want a real job where you don't have to deal with assholes like that, come talk to me. She called me within 24 hours, hired her, didn't really have a position. 2 years later, she was my vice president of customer service. I mean, you find a good person, make a home for them, because you're going to get your money back at some point in time. Going to the outside world, there's the 3 F's of getting a company off the ground: friends, family, and fools. And as you well know, and some of the stuff you've been through, the friends, things go south, the friends will become enemies. The family will disown you, and the fools become very smart, and they'll take everything you got away from you. So you got to kind of watch that. But as you're out, even in the early stages, set an advisory board. Whether they have any real power or not, find a couple people that have been in the space, might have some industry knowledge, might not have any industry knowledge. They've been startups and have done their own thing, and just have somebody you can go talk to. I had a poster on my wall in college, 2 of them that have kind of controlled my life. One said, it's hard to remember your objective was to drain the swamp when you're up to your ass in alligators. And every businessman has that. I mean, you just feel like you're being eaten alive every day. In fact, the best piece of advice I ever got was from my grandfather. He said, Dave, no matter what happens, remember they can't eat you. Yeah. You will survive. But there are times, believe me, that I felt like, they just took a big chunk out of my rear, and I don't know if I'm going to make it, but you can and you will. And if you have advisors that you can talk to that have been there and done that, even if it's a totally different industry, meeting a payroll, working with a irate customer, et cetera, they all have that insight and they can share it with you. And you realize, hey, I'm not on an island. I'm not out of here all by myself.
Yep.
Directors, be very, very, very careful. In fact, most of my directors aren't in financial services. They're just successful business people because I now, after 26 years of trying to be a banker, kind of have a feel for the industry. And I want people outside the industry that look at it differently than what I do or what my employees do. So get people that are outside of your comfort zone and away from it, and they can throw out great ideas. They'll just look at it in a very black and white fashion. They're not enamored with the regulators or what the rules were. Or, well, my bank has done it this way for 30 years. You know, I can truthfully say at First Internet Bank, 26 years old, we've never had the discussion that, well, we do it that way because that's the way we've always done it. In the boardroom, one of my favorite monikers, and they won't let me do much interviewing nowadays. I scare most people away. My play is the only constant is change. The only people that I know that don't change on a daily basis are 6 feet under the ground.
Yeah.
And we don't want to be there.
Yeah.
So get good people. If you can pay them, great. A lot of people do it as a volunteer, particularly in a startup stage. They want to help you because they've been there, they've done that, and they'll give you a hand. Mark Hill and I were good buddies. We were both fighting in financial services arena about the same time, and I told him he was trying to figure out nobody would buy his freestanding loan product in 1988, 1999. I said, Mark, it could all blow up here in 12 months. You don't want to make a big investment. Sell it to them by the slice. Let him do an application by application. Do it as a service bureau. Boom. He went from ready to throw in the towel because nobody would buy to an overnight success and obviously an absolute home run. So it's just that kind of interconnection. I looked at it differently than he did. He was trying to do it the way he had always done it. And he had this great new product, which was really phenomenal. But nobody was willing to make the investment because of what's going on around it. Sell it by the slice, and they all bought it.
I love that. That's fascinating. The what you shared there on even people outside of your industry, I still meet with a group of CEOs once a month, and you talk about it's fight camp. You talk about their stays there, but everybody's in a different business, and I've always learned even more from people who don't do what I do, because they have a different viewpoint, a different vantage point, different experiences, and there's always a piece of gold. Like, oh my gosh, I can apply that.
Oh, without question. I was part of a very similar group. Back in the day, it was called Tech. Then they changed their name. One of the investors bought it to Vistage and whatever, but it was a group of about a dozen CEOs. And for 15 years, I missed one meeting.
Yeah.
It was once a month. It generally had an outside speaker in the morning. And then it was, open the Camino and share anything you wanted from business to personal to wherever. We counseled each other through divorces, through you name it. And that was a group of guys that were just phenomenal. And like you say, I met Reese Nichols, through that organization. We're still good friends today. Bought way too much jewelry from him over the years, but my wife really loves him. And but again, just what BJ dealt with and what I dealt with, two totally different industries in play, but we had so many things we helped each other with over the years. Yeah, that's invaluable. And there are a lot of organizations like that about. Pay attention to what you're doing. Some of them aren't that good, but yeah, it is just a group you can go bare the soul, and you need to do that.
Yeah.
And when everybody thinks as an entrepreneur and you own your own business, you run your life. You can do anything you want, anytime you want. You can play golf. You can go on a vacation. You do whatever.
Yeah, no.
No. And you know what? I've got 330 employees today. At one point in time, I was approaching 600-700 employees in all the different companies. And if I screw up, that's 700 families. In most of the cases, employees working for me are primary breadwinners.
Right.
So I blow it. I'm done, and I've screwed them.
Yeah.
And that's a responsibility that most folks don't think about in the early play. Yeah, you might ultimately call the shot, but there's nobody you can turn to. The buck stops with you.
Stops with you.
And you blow it, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And that's an awful, awful lot of pressure. Once upon a time, I used to have hair. I think I popped it all out over the last 40 years. But so it's You need that group of individuals that you can talk with and work with. It's invaluable.
So we've reached the rapid fire questions part of the podcast. And got a few questions I'll ask you. It could be one word, it could be pass, or a few sentences, however you want to answer them. So the first one is, what do you think people in your industry, and you could pick any industry or things that you've been involved in, but what is one thing that you think people should stop doing?
Second guessing. I mean, you make a decision, move on. If it works, that's fantastic. If it doesn't, try and analyze it and move on. People just keep second guessing themselves in all the industries I've been a part of, and you waste so much time. And by the time you've maybe come up with what you did wrong or figure it out, they've run over you already. So just make a decision and move on.
How about what we should start doing?
Continue to get information from the outside world. Today, obviously, you can get podcasts, you can get all kinds of stuff. Find time to absorb new information. I still read newspapers. Everybody thinks I'm nuts. I get 2 or 3 magazines. I'm getting most of those electronically now so I can catch up on when I'm flying on airplanes and stuff. But you got to absorb outside information. Get away from the office. Go to a conference. People that work with me over the last 40 years, they know when I go to a conference, I'm going to come back with a ship full of new ideas.
Right.
I'm going to make their world miserable. But you need to get out and get away from it. Back to, again, get away from the alligators.
If you could wave a magic wand and solve any problem in the world, what would it be?
To me, it'd be education. And I really think this NCAPS program that we're working on, I'm the first out of, my father was one of 8, my mother was one of 14. I've got hundreds of cousins, and was the first one in the family to get a college education. And the world of difference that it made for me. And it's just that training above and beyond the high school level or on-the-job training. I count GE as my working MBA when I worked for General Electric Credit Corporation in the 70s. And it's education. Give everybody education and opportunity to learn a skill, learn how to learn. Liberal arts education. I'm a political science major. I haven't discussed Plato and Aristotle with a soul since I got out of college. But I got to tell you, my accounting 101 class, I use every day of the week, personal and business, and just the ability to learn how to learn.
Yeah.
It helps you solve problems. It's phenomenal. Education be the game.
Is there anything I haven't asked you today that you want to make sure the world knows?
Ooh. I would tell you, in today's world, start using AI now. Learn everything you can about it. Kids going through school, we're actually getting DePaul University, where 85% of the faculty said we don't want anything to do with AI, that it's going to be in every classroom. It's coming and it's there. It is such a powerful tool, and you don't have to be a programmer to use it. My wife opened a ladies' boutique in downtown Carmel, and she now is named ChatGPT Charlie. She talks to Charlie more than she talks to me. But I mean, it is so helpful to her as a first-time business owner and entrepreneur. Well, what should I do about marketing this, or what should I do there? Or I had this problem today. How do I respond to them? It's just a phenomenal tool. So whatever you're doing, and no matter, you could be retired, just what you can get out of working with AI is just staggering. Your productivity will go through the roof.
So for our listeners out there that want to set up an account with First Internet Bank, how do they find First Internet Bank? If they're looking for a loan, they want to set up an account, where do they go?
www.firstib.com.
Firstib.com.
Yep. And we're there and happy to help. The funny part is people think they're going to get a lot of traditional bankers. Yeah, we got a few of those around, but and it's pretty funny. Some of the traditional bankers come to work for us. They either run out of the office screaming in a couple of weeks, or they're thinking, "Oh my God, I finally, what I've always wanted to do with my life, I can do it here."
Yeah,
and we're very innovative, creative. We do have rules and regulations that we have to follow. We can't just give away money foolishly, but we've helped an awful lot of entrepreneurs and startup companies do things that other bankers wouldn't talk to them about. So, yeah, we'd love to talk to anybody.
I love it. Well, David, thank you for coming on the show today.
Oh, it's been a blast.
Great to see you.
I appreciate it. I can't believe we're out of time already. It seems like we just sat down.
It flies. It goes by so fast. I've learned a ton today. Thank you so much. And until next time, we'll see you soon on Innovate or Evaporate.